Welcome back to Ricochet here at CPAC 2017, and I'm delighted to be here with WMAL radio host, Weekly Standard, and Fox News contributor, Larry O'Connor. And Larry, thank you for joining us.
Thanks, I'm delighted to be here too.
All right. Larry, thanks for joining us.
Sure,
I
my
appreciate
pleasure.
it, greatly appreciate it.
Anything for Ricochet.
Larry,
Ricochet.
Yeah, we got to get that one down in a little
I love
media
the Ricochet
clip.
thing, yeah.
You are Washington-based. You're
I
on the
am.
radio
well,
every
I
morning.
moved to Washington, but my show is Washington-based.
Partly in
yes.
California as well, near me.
I grew up in I moved here from California. I've been here for 4.5 years. So isn't that funny? You said I'm Washington-based, and I immediately resisted that idea.
And the reason you resisted is because you are dealing with a population here, 90% of whom basically voted for the Democrat in most elections, most recently with Hillary Clinton.
Or the Green Party candidate. Jill Stein got quite a few votes,
Did she?
actually. Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah.
So,
But the accurate way to say it is 4% voted for Trump in the city of Washington, D.C.
And these are the employees, these are the bureaucrats that are making decisions or are passing, measures or doing whatever they need to do to implement the policies from previous administrations that affect the entire country.
Yeah. Well, the people who live in Washington, D.C. actually are the lawyers who lobby the people who work in the government, honestly, because it's very expensive to live in Washington, D.C.
Right.
The actual bureaucrats and the employees, they live out into Montgomery County, Prince George's County, Frederick County, Maryland, or maybe down in Fairfax County, Loudoun County, Prince William County, Virginia. Now, I'm not arguing with your point that, yes, there is definitely a liberal base here. The population is liberal. This area voted for Hillary Clinton in a large number. But as any great urban center shows in America, as you start moving out into the suburbs, 30 miles out of the city center, you start getting into rural areas. And here in D.C., it's very rural out there. Frederick, Maryland, a lot of dairy farming. Out into Loudoun County, you get a lot of farming out there as well. It becomes Trump country. It very quickly becomes Trump country. So, and my show caters to all of those listeners, not just the people who live here in Washington, D.C.
So you hear from a lot of those folks. My question really relates to, would there be a change based upon who is in the White House, who is putting the heads of the different departments in politically here in the city itself with those decision makers, with the lobbyists on K Street, or is that always going to consistently remain a blue?
Well, no, I think that what tends to happen, my understanding of what tends to happen here in Washington, D.C. is as the administration changes and as majorities in the House and Senate change, then the lobbyists and the lawyers tend to start hiring people who have relationships with that party that's in charge. So there are a lot more Republicans or conservatives or Republican-leaning people coming in here for employment. They're working for the law firms. It's all part of what's called the establishment.
Right,
yeah.
right. Watching President Trump today, speaking to obviously a very supportive, outside of the media, of course,
yes,
group. Do you believe that he was moving towards a 2020 election campaign here? I mean, what did you think?
I think these days that the re-election begins right at the beginning of the first term, doesn't it? I mean, I don't think there's any surprise there. I think actually what happened today was a little bit more of a valedictory speech. He made mention of the fact at the beginning that his first major political speech was at CPAC about 4 or 5 years ago. I think he felt in a way that he was closing that circle. He wanted to, sort of see I told you so kind of moment. And if you remember last year, you were here last year? It was, oh my God, I mean, the entire narrative was how divided the conservative movement was. And it was. You had your Rubio people, you had your Cruz people, you had your Never Trump people already, you had your Trump people, you had your Rand Paul people. Ron Paul people had been a big part of CPAC for the last several years. So it was all split apart. And now 1 victory later, 1 year later, and you saw what happened in that room. And I think he wanted to make that point that, in D.C., in the media, among the intelligentsia, there's a lot of conversation about the splintered Republican Party, the splintered conservative movement. Well, if CPAC is a reflection of the conservative movement, there's not a whole lot of splintering here outside of that media bubble that does like talking about it. And they like talking about it because it serves their purpose, because they're biased to the left.
One of the things that we see on Ricochet, and Ricochet is a center-right website,
yes,
and we've got libertarians, we've got social conservatives, freedom, economic freedom, free market conservatives, you've got folks that are lean more left. There is still that argument. There is still that argument that some people cannot support this president based upon things that he's said or different policies that he's had.
Same thing where I work at Weekly Standard. Same thing.
And I went on the Weekly Standard cruise, and I met with, and we spoke with Bill Kristol and others. Listen, when you have Bill Kristol and you have other individuals from the Weekly Standard and the National Review that are almost doubled down. I mean, I'll be honest with you. He was very magnanimous on the cruise, and he said, I'm very happy with the cabinet picks. This is before Gorsuch, and I want him to be successful. This is Bill Kristol at your Weekly Standard.
Yeah.
If you've seen his Twitter feed in the past several weeks, I mean, he sounds almost to the left of Mother Jones.
Well, no, he doesn't.
As far as the animosity towards this president.
Well, listen, I'm not going to speak for Bill Kristol, nor should I.
Right.
But I think what we're witnessing is he's not to oppose President Trump or President Trump's behavior or President Trump's language or President Trump's impulses, which I think we all can recognize sometimes deserve some criticism. To criticize that doesn't make you suddenly a liberal. Since when does criticizing Donald Trump mean that you're a liberal, especially if it's not on principle? So to say that he's left of Mother Jones is incorrect.
No. I'm referring to the antagonism level. Okay, I'm not calling Bill Kristol a liberal.
Well,
I'm suggesting that there's a level of animosity.
Listen, I guess the question then is, if one has an honest-to-goodness disagreement with President Trump and voices that in a vocal way, does that mean you have animosity, or does it mean that you are standing on what you believe to be right?
What does Trump do, from your perspective, to bring that sector, that outside of obviously the bubble now, the never Trumpers, if you will, back in?
More Neil Gorsuch.
You think he's going to have the political capital for a second one?
Here's
like
what's
him?
going to happen. Listen, we talked about Bill here, and it's totally understandable. But let's set Bill Kristol aside.
I don't mean to personalize this toward Bill. I'm talking about
I think you're right. So let's not personalize it for a moment and just recognize that there is a still very strong never Trump contingent within the conservative intelligentsia and within the conservative media. We absolutely, and we see it at Ricochet, we see it at Weekly Standard, we see it in many places. So knowing that is there, I think you've got a lot of people who staked their reputation and staked their entire careers on the idea that, listen, this is who Republicans are, this is what conservatism is, and Donald Trump ain't that. And he can't win, and he won't win. And when he did win, that's a jarring moment, isn't it?
Does that come back to protecting their own reputations then?
No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying that because what do they do suddenly? Believe something different? Do they suddenly say, oh, well, maybe conservatism isn't what I thought it was all these years? Or maybe you actually have room for, you just said all of the things that the people at Ricochet are writing. You've got your libertarians, you've got your social conservatives, you've got your national security hawks, you've got your constitutionalists, you've got your Trumpers, you've got, all of them, right?
Guys. Yep,
free market. Okay, so think about Ronald Reagan for a minute. Ronald Reagan won on a three-legged stool. He united the Republican Party on three basic ideas: national security, defeat the Soviet Union, get the government out of your lives, and and social conservatives, things like abortion and things like religious freedom, okay? Those are the three major factions. As a conservative Republican who came of age under Ronald Reagan and actually believe in those three principles as well, I think it's fair to say that as this party and as this movement has journeyed, if you go back about 8 years, there's a big part of those three ideas that sort of got left out. Social conservatism, they talked a good game, but every time social conservatives had an opportunity to either appoint the perfect justice that would protect life or move legislation that would protect life in the House of Representatives and have a president who could sign it, they didn't do a whole lot, did they? They really didn't move it. They won on it, but they didn't do a whole lot. That's right. The small government libertarian guys, the people who just wanted the government out of our lives. You look at the end of the Bush presidency, the government grew in a huge way. Right. So they got a whole lot of lip service when they were running, but they didn't actually get the payoff. So it shouldn't be surprising 8 years later where people finally stood up and said, you know what, remember us? Remember us? And immigration's a big part of that as well. So I think that it is complicated to say what is the conservative movement. It's complicated to say what do we stand for, because as reflected on your site, as reflected on the pages of the Weekly Standard, as reflected here at CPAC often, we stand for a lot of different things. I think that, so to bring it back to your question, what can Trump do? What Trump can do is give voice at various times to all of those factions, and I think he does do that. Sometimes Bill Kristol, Steve Hayes, the folks at National Review and Ricochet, they love what Trump has done.
Right.
They loved many of his cabinet picks. They loved Neil Gorsuch, so why I said more Neil Gorsuch. They're going to celebrate that. But when he enforces immigration in the way that he did with his executive order, there's going to be a whole lot of people who felt voiceless. They're going to love that. So,
Right.
I mean, I'm going on and on because I'm a radio host and I like to talk about these things. But I think too many people are looking for a magic bullet and looking for some sort of secret sauce. It's like, this is going to unite us all. No. We all have different agendas.
So the ideal of a big tent is to allow all of those agendas to percolate.
I think it is, and then find the core things that we can all agree on. And I think that there are some core things that we can all agree on, and that's how we won.
Larry
all right,
O'Connor,
I'm blithering
we'll hear you
on
on
I talk
WMAL.
way too much.
We'll
I'm
see you
sorry.
on Weekly Standard.
Thanks,
Greatly
man.
appreciate
Good
the
to
time.
talk to you. Thanks for giving me your time.
Thank you so much.
Be good to your kids. They've been good to you.